Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I am going to be starting a new series here on my channel. It is something that I have found such an interest in. I've always been so interested in, really loved watching Kendall Rae, Bella Fiore, Griffin Arnold's videos of, the true crime series, the missing people, murder mystery, all of those kinds of videos. So I decided to start a series on my channel that is very, very similar to those. So I'm not 100% sure how many videos of these I'll be making a month, or if I'll be making them every week. They're very time consuming because you have to have all the research. You want to make sure that everything is correct whenever you're doing it, and you want to do the cases justice. So I will let y'all know after I see y'all's response to this video. So for today's first case, I'm going to be doing the Van Breda family. This case I found just so interesting, and I wanted to do this as my first case. One, because it is a solved case, and I actually love watching solved cases. I know some people don't. I like watching them because, you get justice at the end of it, and you don't have to wonder. I love, the theories of different cases. I know a lot of people do too, but I thought I'd start with a solved case, and then, I'll do some other types of videos, and y'all can always request down in the comments certain cases and, certain missing persons cases, true crime, anything like that y'all want to see. But yeah, so for today's case, we are going to be talking about the Van Breda family murder. And I just want to give a side note, since this is my first one, I want to make sure I'm getting all the information correctly. So I do have my laptop in my lap. I wrote down notes, pages of notes, and I just want to make sure that, I'm giving y'all, I'm probably not going to share every little bit of the notes because some notes I got a little too tedious, but I do want to make sure that everything I'm saying is correct and it's in the correct order. So if y'all see me looking down at my computer at all, that's because I just want to make sure that everything is good and it's coming across right and all the information's good, and correct. So here we go. So this case takes place in South Africa, which actually has a very, very, very high crime rate. And unfortunately, on January 27th of 2015, 3 members of the Van Breda family, Martin Van Breda, Teresa Van Breda, and Rudy Van Breda, all lost their life to a horrific axe attack. Henry, who was 20 at the time, he was also the youngest son. He was slightly injured from the attacks, and there was also Marley, who was the only daughter. She was 16 at the time, and she suffered from some pretty severe wounds as well. The Van Breda family consisted of Martin Van Breda and his wife Teresa Van Breda, Rudy Van Breda, who was 22 at the time, Henry, who was 20, and Marley, who was 16. So in 2001, the Van Breda family moved from South Africa to Perth, Australia. They were a pretty wealthy family. They had several million-dollar houses. Their kids went to some of the best schools, some of the most expensive schools to get into, but all around they were a good family. They were a tight-knit family and very, very wealthy. Rudy actually moved after his family moved to Perth. He moved to Melbourne and went to university, or college here in America, but he went to university there, and his younger brother Henry decided to follow him a few years later and go to university at the same school in Melbourne, and I believe they both studied physics. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I'm pretty sure it's I read that a few places. At the same time that Rudy and Henry decided to move to Melbourne for university, Marley, Teresa, and Martin decided to move to the Sunshine Coast so that they could be closer to the boys, and just so they could live in a new area. Then in 2014, Teresa, Martin, and Marley all moved back. Well, Marley kind of had to move back because she was, a minor at the time, but they all moved back from Sunshine Coast and from Australia, and they decided to move back to South Africa, mainly because Martin, a lot of his business, a lot of his clientele were in South Africa, and it was really hard for him to, do all of his businesses and everything whenever he was in Australia and everything else was in South Africa. And also Teresa really wanted to move back because her whole family lived in South Africa, and she just really wanted to be around them more. When they moved back to South Africa, they actually moved into a gated community in Stellenbosch. I believe I'm saying that correctly, but I'm not 100% sure. So I think it's called Stellenbosch. It's Stellenbosch. So if I'm saying it wrong, try and correct me as best as you can down in the comments, which was an extremely beautiful place. I mean, it was I mean, it was like a bucket list goals place to go to. It was beautiful. It was very wealthy to live there. Just absolutely stunning. Like, I'll insert some pictures, but definitely do your own research on the place because it was so beautiful. They live specifically in the Zalz estate. I'm not sure if I'm saying Zalz correctly, but I believe it was the Zalz estate, which was also like the Zalz golf estate, which was in the gated community that they lived in. This neighborhood, this like community was, I'm not sure if I said, but it's a gated community. I think I did. I just want to double check and make sure I'm saying, make sure I said that, but it was one of the safest places. Like, the gates were insane. They were extremely high. I am not 100% sure because I saw from several different sources how high the gates were, but they were just extremely high gates, and they were also electric. They also had security going at all times and 365 cameras at all times, always running. Henry decided that he wanted to take a break from university, so he actually moved from Melbourne back to South Africa and moved in with his parents for a little bit. And shortly after that, Henry was actually on summer vacation and moved back to South Africa for the summer, just so he could, you know, be around his whole family. Like, Henry was there, Marley was there, his parents were there, other, you know, family were there, so that he just wanted to be around the rest of the family and be with everyone. So he moved back for the summertime. And like I said earlier, they seemed to get along and be a really good family, a really tight-knit and close family. So it was kind of odd whenever everything went down. But on the 26th of January, they were doing a family dinner at home. Teresa was cooking. Marley was upstairs in her bedroom doing some homework. It was a Monday, so she had school the next day, so she was trying to get her homework done. Rudy was out for a run before dinner, which was something he normally did. Martin and Henry are both actually enjoying a few glasses of red wine before dinner. They had a great dinner. It was pretty just great. It was normal, nothing out of the ordinary. Like I said, they cleaned up afterwards. Henry and Rudy actually watched Star Trek. Martin went onto his computer and he did some business a little bit after dinner. Teresa talked to her brother on the phone and just had like a nice little chat with him, and Marley went upstairs to finish up her homework that she hadn't finished earlier before dinner. And then after everyone finished up their nightly shows and whatever tasks they were working on, everyone went to bed. And Rudy and Henry actually shared a room together, and everyone kind of called it and joked that it was the boys' room. But yes, they shared a room together, and Rudy fell asleep fairly quickly after everyone kind of called it a night and went upstairs to go to bed. But Henry actually said that he had really bad trouble going to sleep that night. He could not go to sleep. He stayed up for hours. He was trying to just, you know, play on his computer, put in some tunes, and he could not fall asleep. But around 2 or 3 a.m., Rudy decided to get out of bed and go to the bathroom. He took his phone and was just gonna sit in the bathroom and go to the bathroom and just play on his phone, play some games on there. Shortly after that, he heard some noises. He heard like loud banging noises outside of the bathroom, but it was inside of the house that he heard these noises. So he decided to leave the bathroom. Whenever he left the bathroom, he kind of realized that the noises were coming from the boys' room where him and Rudy have been, you know, sleeping. So he decided to walk towards the room, and that's whenever he saw a shadowy figure standing above Rudy. The attacker was completely covered head to toe. You couldn't tell what nationality he was or anything like that. He or she was, but all you could see were the eyes through a mask. That's whenever Henry started to yell at the attacker whenever he was attacking his brother Rudy, and then shortly after that, Martin heard all of the noises, all of the yelling, and he ran upstairs to go see what was happening and to go check on everyone. Martin ran into the room and turned on the lights, and that's whenever he saw the attacker that was hitting Rudy with the axe. Martin decided to try and wedge himself between Rudy and the attacker to try and stop what was happening. But once the lights went on, Henry could tell that the axe was actually in Rudy's head and that the attacker had taken it out and started to hit Martin in the back. Henry says that he could not move. He was frozen. He couldn't help them. He couldn't help his brother. He couldn't help his father. He was just frozen in fear and absolutely distraught at what was happening. Henry says that the attacker was laughing while he was hitting Rudy and Martin with the axe. So he claims that he still hears the attacker in his sleep. Teresa heard everything and noticed that Martin wasn't there in the bed anymore, and so she jumped out of bed, ran upstairs to go check on everyone, and when she got there, she ran in to the hallway that Henry was in whenever he left the bathroom, and Teresa was there. That's when she saw the attacker, she saw Martin, and she saw her son Rudy. Henry claims that he could not see Teresa from the corner he was standing in, and it's a little confusing on how Henry got from the hallway where the bathroom was somehow in the bedroom into a corner. That is still, to this day, no one understands how that possibly could have happened without the attacker attacking him, or why he walked into the room and then just went into a corner. No one really understands what happened for him to be able to get into the room and stand in a corner, but that's what he says happened. So he was in the corner in the room, like I said, and Teresa was in the hallway. Henry says that he could not see his mom, Teresa, but that the attacker left Rudy and Martin and ran after Teresa. Once the attacker was done, as Henry claims, with Teresa, he went back into the room and walked towards Henry, but he was very slow. He wasn't aggressive like he was towards the rest of the family members. He was very slow walking towards Henry, and just didn't seem very interested in Henry. That's when he got very, very close to Henry and raised the axe above his head, and as he came down with the axe onto Henry, Henry grabbed the attacker's arm with one hand and reached up and grabbed the axe with the other hand. He eventually got the axe away from the attacker, and Henry claims that it was very easy. It was not too much of a struggle, and it was very easy for him to get the axe away from the attacker. After he got the axe away, the attacker pulled out a knife from his pocket or something like that and started stabbing Henry in the stomach. He also stabbed him, or I'm sorry, he did not stab him in the stomach, he stabbed him in the arm. And then Henry was trying to hit the attacker with the axe, and that's when the attacker was grabbing the axe, Henry was grabbing the knife from him, and they were kind of wrestling back and forth trying to get each other's weapons out. That's whenever the attacker got a hold of the knife again and stabbed Henry in the stomach. After the attacker stabbed Henry in the stomach, Henry stabbed or used the axe and hit the attacker in the right shoulder. The attacker then dropped the knife and ran out of the room and down the hallway and down the stairs. Henry ran after him with the axe, ran to the stairs, and Henry threw the axe at the attacker, and when he did that, Henry fell down the stairs. Whenever he was at the end of the stairs, the attacker was gone. Henry did not know which way he went, but the side door was open, so he obviously thought that that was the way that the attacker went out. So Henry decided to get up and go out the side door and look and see where the attacker went. After he looked around for a few, he ran back into the house, and that's whenever he went back upstairs and noticed that his sister Marley was moving her right leg and her right arm, trying to show that she was still alive. After seeing Marley, Henry claims he passed out for 2 hours. Whenever he came to, he Googled and searched for the 112. Yeah, he called 112, which is like in America, it's our 911. So I'm going to link in the description box the phone call that was between Henry and the emergency services operator. It is one of the most frustrating operator calls, and if you're new to some of these cases, you will notice that the police and these emergency service operators can be so frustrating in some of these cases. It is a matter of life or death in some of these in minutes, and some of these people just, these police, some of these operators just don't see the value, I guess. I don't really know, but they just don't find the urgency in some of these calls. I know at the time they don't know that it is this case, that this is what it's going to turn out to be, but still, you should treat every case like it is, you know, life or death, in my opinion. So he actually called the operator, the emergency services operator there in South Africa, and definitely go listen to the call. Either pause this video, go listen to the call, or just wait till after I'm about to explain it, but either way, you have to listen to this call. It's frustrating, but it makes so much sense in this case as well. So when Henry was giving the address to the operator, she could not seem to find the address, could not seem to find their house, which on Google Maps or in her database, which was because it's a gated neighborhood, but still, he actually had to give an address, a street that was a few streets over, and he actually had to give it like 10 to 15 times before this operator finally just like gave up and trying to locate like their address or this new address. I don't really know what was happening in this phone call and who this person was, but they just really were not good at their job. He also had to give his mobile number 3 times, and the call lasted a total of 25 minutes, which is insane. After the call that lasted 25 minutes was over, police were finally dispatched, and the first paramedic that was on the scene, there's actually a video of him talking. I'll try and find that video and link it down in the description box as well. But he does say that the scene when he walked into the house, it looked undisturbed in a way that things weren't stolen or anything like that, like, you know, things hadn't been, you know, ripped off the walls, crazy stuff like that. But that it was chaos in the sense of there was blood everywhere. He also said that whenever he picked up to move Teresa's body after they had examined her there, she was right next to the stairs, that it was like a waterfall of blood going down the stairs. Marley had 5 axe wounds to her head, a severed jugular, and several other injuries. They actually kept her in the hospital. She was guarded at the hospital since they still hadn't found who did this, and she was still in critical condition, but thankfully and luckily she did survive, and she is alive today. Henry actually was staying with his uncle or his aunt and uncle. I found several sources that said different things, that he was just with his uncle, that he was with his uncle and aunt. I'm not 100% sure, but Henry was with his uncle after everything had occurred. And unfortunately, on the 27th of January 2015, the rest of the family, Martin, Teresa, and Rudy, had all died at the scene. The only 2 surviving witnesses were Henry Van Breda and Marley Van Breda. Marley was obviously in the hospital, so they couldn't, you know, get what they could from her, or they couldn't get anything from her, but Henry was the only one, and up to this point, everything you've heard is from his point of view of what happened that night. The memorial for the 3 family members took place on, let me double check, it took place on February 5th, 2015, and sadly Marley couldn't attend because of her wounds, but Henry did attend the memorial. After the memorial, the focus immediately turned on figuring out who killed the Van Breda, the 3 members of the Van Breda family, and it took about 1.5 years after the crime had been committed for the authorities to make a break in the case. The police turned to Henry and Marley for anything that could help with finding and arresting whoever did this. Marley was still, like I said, in the hospital, but unfortunately she was suffering from amnesia and could not remember what had happened that night, so she could not give any testimony or anything on what actually happened or who the attacker was. So it was all up to Henry. He was the only witness, and at the same time the murders happened, there was the Bella Clarver gang. I think I'm saying that right. I hope I'm saying that right. The Bella Clarver gang, which was actually in that area. They were known for burglary. I think they were connected to about 60 crimes in South Africa. Something that made the police not suspect them too much or really follow through with them is that there was no forced entry at the Van Breda family, and there was no valuables that were stolen. There was also no bloody footprints or fingerprints that would be from someone's shoe or anything like that. It was odd because actually the axe and the knife were from the Van Breda family. Like, the family owned that axe and that knife, and usually when a killer is going to go in and kill someone, murder someone, that they are going to bring their own weapons, and they're actually going to take them with them. And another odd thing about this case was that the attacker did not take the weapons with him. He did not take the axe, and he did not take the knife, which is 2 very, very weird things that typically don't happen in these kinds of cases. So the police at this point thought that it had nothing to do with burglary, it had nothing to do with their money or anything like that. It all had something to do with someone just wanting to kill this family. The police actually ended up turning their focus completely onto Henry, and Henry's lawyers actually suggested that he turn himself in before the police get a warrant for his arrest. There was just a lot of evidence that was stacking up against him, and he was also wearing pajama shorts and white socks, and whenever they tested those two items for DNA, the blood that was on him, the blood that was found on the pajama shorts and the socks were from Teresa, Marley, Rudy, and Martin, which was very odd because if he was in the corner, how would he have gotten, I mean, it depends on where he was standing, but still, I mean, how would he have gotten Marley's blood on him? If he didn't, he went upstairs and he said he saw her, but he never said that he, you know, touched her and, you know, helped her. So he never helped touch Teresa, Martin, or Rudy, so how would he have gotten all of their blood on his pajama shorts and his socks? So yeah, that was just something that was really odd to me, and I think it was odd to a lot of people. But on June 13th, 2016, Henry Van Breda actually turned himself in 18 months after the crime took place. He was charged with 3 counts of murder, 1 count of attempted murder, and 1 count of obstruction of justice, and I'm not 100% sure on this one, but I've seen and read on a few sources that he was charged with 1 count of tampering with a crime scene. He provided police with false information, and also his injuries, the stabbing to his arm and his stomach, were all self-inflicted. An expert actually ruled that those were all self-inflicted and all superficial wounds to the body. The police ended up creating a new timeline of events that occurred based on Henry's phone records. Since they could not trust what was actually coming out of Henry's mouth, and what he originally stated, they actually created something totally different. So at 4:22 a.m. on January 27th, 2015, the night that everything had occurred, and this was technically after the murders had occurred, Henry called his girlfriend at 4:22 a.m., which is very, very strange. But he called his girlfriend, who lived back in Australia. Then at 7:12 a.m. he started Googling emergency service numbers in South Africa, which another thing is strange about that is that there was a list on their fridge of emergency numbers that the family all knew about in case of an emergency, like, you know, the police, ambulance, anything like that. It's just the list is on the fridge for everyone's convenience. He walked past it several times, but he decided to Google the number instead of using what was on the fridge, which raised a few eyebrows as well. A few minutes later, he actually called the emergency service number after he had gotten, after the Google search had come up. Right after getting off the phone with the operator for the emergency services, he called his girlfriend again, who lived in Australia. Another thing that's weird. Why call your girlfriend 2 times, after something like that has happened to your family? Now going back to the emergency services call that I suggest you definitely listen to, the reason the operator claims that she was not as helpful in a way is because she said that she thought it was a prank. She thought he was pranking her. He actually does laugh. At one point he says, "Yes, they're all bleeding from their head," and he laughs. I don't even know what else to say after that. It's just kind of crazy. But he laughed after saying that, and you can hear it very, very clearly on the operator, on the phone call. And the operator thought that this was a prank, especially because his voice in the call, he just sounded like he was ordering pizza or something. He didn't sound like he was making a call that could save his sister's life, or a call that he had just seen his whole family get murdered. Like, it was just a regular phone call to him, and that's honestly what sends chills down my spine. It's so creepy and it's so crazy. At Henry's plea hearing on June 14th, 2016, his attorney read an 18-page explanation explaining the difference between his story at that point and his story of what he claims happened the night of the murders. He changed some things. So what he said that the night of the murders happened, that he could not tell who the attacker was, gender, anything like that, nationality, but he claims in the explanation that the person was African American. But the person was covered head to toe, so how would he even know that? In his initial statement, there was 1 person, and in his explanation, his 18-page explanation, he claims that he heard multiple voices in the house, and police thought he was just at this point, just, whatever, trying to switch the blame and put it onto the the Bella Clarver gang that I mentioned earlier. They think that he was trying to do that, which, you know, didn't stick. And another thing that was strange that they brought up, I'm pretty sure they brought it up in court, if not, it's just strange to everyone. After the emergency services call and after the call to his girlfriend, he started smoking a cigarette in his kitchen. I'm sorry, but after you just witnessed what you witnessed, you would not smoke a cigarette in your kitchen waiting for emergency services to come while your parents and your brother and your sister are upstairs and your sister's still alive and hanging on for her dear life. Honestly, this guy, if you can't tell, is crazy. As I state, security manager also got on the stand and testified that there was no security breach. Their security is very on top of it. There was no security breach that night. And like I said earlier, there was 365 cameras and it was an electric gate, almost impossible to climb. So no one could have gotten in that community unless it was someone that had a gate card and was allowed in there. Forensic experts also testified that there was no foreign fingerprints or footprints detected in the house. Every fingerprint and footprint that was detected there was from someone in that family. The prosecution pretty much determined that it couldn't possibly be anyone else other than Henry, but they still actually had to prove that he committed this crime so they could, you know, lock him up. The prosecutor had to poke holes in Henry's story, which was not that hard to do because his story was a load of crap, honestly. But the neighbor heard yelling at 10 p.m. and Henry claimed that that was just Star Trek and their new surround system and that, you know, that's all it was. And the neighbor said, no, I know the difference between listening to Star Trek, a movie playing on a surround sound system, than listening to my neighbor's voices, who I've heard a million times, yelling and people yelling at each other. So the neighbor was just like, no, I'm not stupid. Also, in the original statement, the movie actually claimed to have been finished well before 10 p.m. They also focused on the blood splatter. The blood splatter that was on Henry did not match where he could have possibly been standing. And like I said earlier, it just didn't make sense for him to stand in the corner and to have gotten the blood how he did on him from his family members. It did not make sense. He would have had to have been very close in a close proximity whenever all of them were getting hit. It also shows inconsistencies when he threw the axe at the attacker. They also found some of Rudy's blood in the bathroom, which didn't match up to Henry's original statement that no one had gone to the bathroom. The last person in the bathroom was Henry, and it was whenever he was coming out of the bathroom to find that the attacker was in his room with Rudy. So it didn't make sense to find Rudy's blood in there. He kept repeating the outline and the explanation that he said whenever he finally took the stand on April 4th, 2017. That's also whenever the trial officially started, and people just remember saying that they looked at his eyes and his body language and it was just like a cold-blooded killer. You could spot it from a mile away. He had no emotion and there was just nothing. In his eyes, he had nothing. Henry claimed that the inconsistencies were because the police were just transcribing everything, but that's not true. The prosecutor also questioned why it took 3 hours for him to finally call the emergency services after his family had all been murdered. He said that it was, you know, and he said that he knew that the numbers were on the fridge for the emergency services, but that he wanted to Google it because he felt it was faster. Wouldn't you just dial the number on the fridge? That would be way faster than Googling and trying to find the right number. I don't know, but, you know, at the end of the day, the prosecutor poked holes all throughout Henry's story, and on November 29th, 2017, they actually closed his case, and in February of 2018, the closing arguments were made, and they claimed that Henry was the only one that could have actually committed this crime. On May 21st of 2018, Henry Van Breda was given 3 life sentences for the murders of Teresa Van Breda, Rudy Van Breda, and Martin Van Breda. He was also given a 15-year sentence for the attempted murder of Marley Van Breda and 1 year of obstruction of justice. That is all for today's video. That was a whirlwind. That was a lot to get through, but that was my first case, and I really hope y'all find it interesting. I'll have, you know, tons of stuff linked in the description box for more materials, for other videos, for other things, y'all, if y'all want to keep hearing about this. But I'm just so glad that Henry was locked up and that Marley is doing okay. And I'll actually try and find an article that talks about Marley so that y'all can actually hear and read all about her. and how she's doing today. But yeah, let me know if there's any other cases y'all would like me to do, and I cannot wait to do some more of these. And so yeah, let me know if y'all have any other video requests or true crime cases y'all want me to do, and I'll see y'all in my next video. Mwah.